Ford v Ferrari is directed by James Mangold and stars Christian Bale, Matt Damon, John Berthel, and among others. And this is based on the true story of Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby, who represented the company called the Ford. The vehicle company called Ford Motors, and that was also ran by Henry Ford II in the 60s. And this story, it deals with Carroll Shelby, played by Matt Damon's character, who basically works for the Ford manufacturer company, who want to basically create pretty much the perfect car, basically a car to be in competition with Ferrari, the famous sports manufacturer company that deals with sports cars and stuff.
Yeah.
And this story, it deals basically with his driver, who's in racing, which is Ken Miles, who's played by Christian Bale. And they basically have to they work together to create a sports car for Ford, since Ford's basically going through a lot of tough time with competition.
Just being the standard family car, so they want to do something that makes them stand out in the spotlight.
Yeah, and then they also get a chance to do a test run by having to compete within racing against Ferrari's vehicles.
And I forgot the race's name.
It's called It was the Derby. No, not the Derby. The 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans race.
Yeah, Le Mans, which is
in France.
Pretty much the World Series when it comes to racing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this. Now here's a little backstory. Now this movie was directed by James Mangold, who I've actually become quite a big fan of.
I'm a big
his
fan
movies that he's done.
Find him to be an underrated writer and an underrated director.
Yeah, he got his big break in the '90s when he directed a very underrated film called Copland, and then the 2000s he brought a lot of great movies, including Walk the Line.
Walk the Line, which I fucking love.
Yeah,
that movie.
and then he also did Logan a couple years ago, which I thought was my best movie of 2017.
Yeah, not to mention it's the best X-Men movie.
Yeah. And the trailers for this got me interested because it's we don't really see these type of racing movies too much like we used to anymore. There was a time we got to get them like probably in the 90s and a little bit in the 2000s, like with Days of Thunder.
Yeah, and Days of Thunder.
And
there was one that the only one I know that was really big like this film was called Rush, which I haven't seen yet.
Yeah, with Ron Howard a few years ago.
Which I heard was really good, but I haven't seen it. So, yeah, we get these every out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Usually people just go to Fast and the Furious. So
pretty much.
I like it when they go to stuff like this.
Yeah, and so with this one coming out, it got me pretty interested because it was just going into that level. But I also like the cast too, because I'm like I said in a lot of our reviews, I always go see movies with Christian Bale a lot.
Oh yeah,
and him and Matt Damon, they really got my interest.
Yeah.
And so upon seeing the movie, I can say that this was definitely pretty good. It was.
Yeah, this movie was freaking. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah. And to get my pros out of the way, the cast alone, like Christian Bale and Matt Damon, they bring their A game like they usually do. Like they had a lot of funny moments too, that because they
got like a banter because they got a little history with one another, and like you saw in the trailer where their fight scene, they got a lot of like little banter going back and forth. Not as much as I thought it was going to go for, but it still was really genuine. And funny. I thought Matt Damon and Christian Bale had great chemistry, and what can I say that out of both of them, I mean, they both were evenly, but just Christian Bale just steals everything.
Oh yeah,
he does, and it's actually kind of cool to see. Finally, for once, he isn't playing American; he's playing his accent.
Yeah, I don't know if that's his like real voice, but it's the real guy that he's playing was he was from the United Kingdom. He was British. Yeah. But it's great. It's different. It's rare that we see him playing his native accent, but he still pulled it off. Like he's still pretty great. I enjoy him, and
he actually slimmed down his body yet again because the guy he portrays. Like they show like the picture of the guy, and they look alike.
They do, yeah.
Fucking,
and that's when Christian Bale is a chameleon, man. He'll get into pretty much any fucking role.
Yeah, and you gotta
like last year,
he just went from Vice, where he's really really fat.
Yeah,
and he's playing Dick Cheney, and he went from that to this. So he had to go from that big heavy set to fucking back to pretty much the fighter type level or machinist.
Or even, because and that was the opposite, like he did in the 2004. He went from being skinny as hell in the machinist, and a year later he plays Batman. Yep. That's how dedicated an actor fucking goes.
That's why I love. I think you could put Bale and Barney, and he'd be fucking making that movie good.
Yeah, I mean, granted, it is probably not good for his health because it seems like it's taken a lot of his his body for over the years. Yeah, but that's how dedicated he is, and he really pulls it off with this. And his comedic timing in this is also great too, with some of the little parts where he's talking shit to that one dude from American Psycho that he played with.
Yeah, we got a good laugh here. Thought, if you guys remember in American Psycho, they exchanged those business cards, and they're sitting there talking about, like, in his head he's talking about how good the fucking card was. When they first meet, I had that image in my head. He's like the pretty much second in command with Ford. Yeah, I thought he was gonna whip out his card right there. God, that would have been fucking hilarious.
Yeah, Josh Lucas.
Yeah, Josh Lucas. Yeah, that plays in this. If you remember him, he was also from Sweet Home Alabama.
Yeah. And the rest of the cast are great too. It's also great to see John Berthel playing in a movie that's a lot more supportive of, because I noticed that in the last few years he's been getting a lot of small roles that I've been noticing.
Yeah, he's played in a fucking shit ton of movies lately, and we just saw one just recently called Peanut Butter Falcon. Yeah, but he's playing a lot of sideline roles.
Yeah,
he's still in everything though.
That's what I'm saying.
It's weird, but yeah,
but he was great, and it was also. But what I really love the movie the most too is the way that they go into detail with the way that the car they're making for Ford and everything can go. And when they get to the racing sequences, I gotta admit that it gets pretty fucking intense.
Yeah, this is probably some of the most realistic racing sequences I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
Some of the best.
Yeah, the last one I can think of that I watched something on that level, I think was maybe Days of Thunder, or maybe something else that I'm trying to think of.
No,
but
disrespect
that realistic level.
Yeah, no disrespect with Fast and the Furious. While the earlier entries do feel intense, and they do good with their special effects in the later ones, I do feel like a lot of it you could tell is CGI.
True, yeah.
So this one, it takes them very more authentic. I believe they actually made it so authentic by getting real drivers.
I think so too.
But anyways, going to our pros, back to our pros, like we said, everybody in the that played on the side characters, like the guy that played Henry Ford's second, was a fucking cocksucker dick, which from what I've heard, he was back in that times, but the guy who plays him looks just fucking like him.
Yeah. And then you got
everybody else is just freaking phenomenal in this film.
Well, and I also appreciate that the movie, builds upon. We also get to see the side of Ferrari itself, like how they work and everything, because we actually have kind of a subplot going on where they're trying to basically get to try to co-brand with Ferrari at the beginning of it, and Ferrari's like, no, y'all shit is y'all make those little cars that are just family cars,
Yeah.
So I like that the movie spins on both sides. Not a whole lot on the Ferrari side, but you get the dynamic that they're going with.
Yeah. It's in there, but it is kind of smaller than what it was.
True.
But this movie, it's got a great story, because instead of rushing through things, what I appreciate about this film the most, which I appreciate this director, because this director takes risks. He's not known to make very short movies. Yeah. And he pays attention to so little detail that he feels like everything needs to be explained, which I felt like works in this film. Now, there is a little con I do have to that later on, but that's why I like about this director. He the build-up is so good.
It is.
It shows, instead of just saying, oh, magically the car works and all that stuff.
No, it goes into detail.
There's a lot of very dramatic scenes where you think, oh, God, it's going to end in disaster.
And it pushes the stakes pretty well with that, because it shows, the risks involved with this type of car they're making, because it's not going to be just a lightning in a bottle, so to speak. It's actually something they have to really pay attention to.
Yeah, you got to talk. You're talking about a car that was known for making family-oriented cars.
Yeah.
To get into the sports thing, which Ferrari's been in since the beginning.
Yeah, they go into detail about how the brakes are messed up in some parts, and there's even a whole scene where Bale's listening to the radio about other racers in France, or I'm sorry, Italy, that were I think it was Italy or France, one of the places that get into those kind of disasters, so to speak. So I like that the movie really spends time with that and shows a lot of what goes into it.
And I will say that the practical effects, which everything looks pretty authentic in this film. I mean, even
the sound design, the sound when you hear the cars like on the road and stuff, it feels like you're actually on the road with them.
Yeah, you feel like you're a part of the race yourself, and it makes you gripe at the seat because you're talking about they're breaking records at 250 miles an hour. I'm like, holy shit, you know. And it's just it had great funny moments, a hell of a great story, just building all the way to, if you guys know the true story. I don't know if it's a spoiler or not.
We won't.
Yeah, but if you know the story, then you knew how it plays out. Which I didn't know much about the story. I didn't know either, so it was kind of neat to go in this not knowing that we get to this certain ending and how it
goes out.
Yeah, how it goes out, which was quite emotional. By the way, there's some pretty emotional shit that happens in here, and
it does. And now, if I do have like any kind of just minor thing, I will say that while the movie does do a great way with giving you the motions toward the end of it. Yeah, there is something I do feel like there's a time jump that they kind of do that they basically kind of glared over and not really not really give you any leeway of pretty much that gap.
Exactly, because there's this really emotional part. And it's sad, and they could have used that to his advantage. And his director has used it before in another movie that worked out so well, which I felt like, while the emotion is still there, the time jump kind of kills the emotion. It's in a way, it's kind of like it's a missed opportunity because you follow this character throughout the whole movie. Yeah, and he is known throughout history as one of the best drivers ever. Yeah. And it was just kind of glared over, which I don't know if if the director felt like that was better off going that direction or not. I don't know. I just felt like if it would have done a more deeper whenever the event happens.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it, but
let's just say that it could have had a better time gap between.
Yeah. Now, another thing, why I said earlier where I praised the director, how he makes his movie so long because he has to tell the story in every little aspect, the detail. I mean, digs so great. That's what makes this. I find him to be an underrated director and writer. I do feel like out of all the films that are because you got Walk the Line, Logan, all of them that are really, really long, I do feel like this one's pacing was
trimmed a little.
Yeah, you could have trimmed a lot more in this film compared to those movies. Yeah, because those movies that whole entire runtime of those other films worked. Completely. This one, it does, but then there's parts that I felt like they could have shaved off.
Yeah, there could have been some pacing that could have been a little trimmed down. Not too much, just a little bit to kind of flesh some things out, basically.
Exactly.
But other than that, though, that was my only really big issues. Other than that, I still enjoyed the movie a lot, and I was glad to see that these kind of movies. These kind of racing type movies, they're it's great to see them every now and then.
Yeah, it's good that they're not being straight to video.
Well, because we had that trend in the early 2000s when Fast and Furious came out, and we were getting that trend where more movies were trying to be like that.
Yeah, so they were just being fit. Yeah.
But overall, I did highly enjoy this movie a lot. And with that being said, I'm gonna give the movie I'm gonna probably go with maybe just a low phenomenal grade on the Film Phreeks meter.
Yeah, I'm a pretty extremely low on the phenomenal grade and Film Phreeks meter as well.
Fair enough. For those of you who have also seen Ford versus Ferrari, let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. And if you like what you see here, you can feel free to like and subscribe to our channel and check out some of our other reviews here and our website at filmphreeks.com. And we'll be seeing you in our next review.
Later.
We'll see you later.